Assalamu alaikum and a very good morning to you all. A happy Monday. I hope you all had a fantastic weekend and you're ready to start your week. Have a productive week. As we know, this weekend has been a very exciting time. Unfortunately, it wasn't that positive because we did lose the match. But, you know, there's a lot of tension, there's a lot of stresses in the air. And not just within our social life, within our work lives too. So today, what I'm going to do is we have organized a show for you to help you cope with life, to help you cope with the work stresses, to help you cope with life stresses. And I know for all those people watching the cricket, you guys need to manage your anxiety and your stress levels as well. So today's show is perfect for you, so do stay tuned because we've got some very interesting areas we're going to be discussing. Now, we talk about how to manage stress and how to cope with it, because at the end of the day, life throws lots of curveballs at us, and we're not always prepared to deal with them. So today we're going to be discussing what type of stresses we have, especially within the work environment, how to cope with them, and the solutions to make our lives better, to make it a bit easier. Because these days, the 21st century, there's so much going on, so we need to look out for our health. And I'd like to share with you one thing that, you know, depression, anxiety, stress, these things don't mean that you're crazy or that you're losing the plot or that you're emotionally unstable. That means that you have a lot of empathy and that you can feel a lot and you have a lot of emotion. And, you know, T.S. Eliot said that anxiety is the handmaiden of creativity. So if we learn to channel these things, then we can do something productive with it. So for that, we have some very able guests in the studio, and I'm really happy to have them here because one of them has been here before and he's very knowledgeable and he's going to give us a lot of insight. And besides him, we have another lady who is, you know, this is her profession. She helps to heal people and she helps to, you know, deal with their problems. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce to you my guests. Besides me, we have Dr. Aisha Minhas. She is a psychiatrist and assistant professor at the Institute of Psychiatry at the Benazir Bhutto Hospital. Good morning. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here. Besides Dr. Aisha, we have Mr. Faheem Sardar. He is the CEO of Askari Securities. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Welcome back.
Pleasure to be here.
So are you guys awake today? I'm not feeling the energy right now. You guys have to wake up because we have to get people interested in what we're going to be talking about today. So I'm going to start with you, Dr. Aisha. You know, in the 21st century, there's a lot of stresses, especially with work, at home life. What do we mean when we say that, oh, I'm feeling stressed out? Because it's such a broad term.
Well, actually, let's see what is stress. Stress is just a non-specific response of the body to any demand which exceeds or challenges the resources available.
Right.
So if, you know, you're able to deal with things around you, you don't get stressed up. But if the demands become, you know, very taxing and you're not able to deal, or you feel greatly challenged, or you're constantly struggling, then you'll, you know, we can say that he's stressed out.
Right, okay.
That's how stress is defined.
Okay, and so, you know, but there's different means of stress, and for different people there's different thresholds. So
Yes, definitely.
what is the point at which we think that, okay, now this is overwhelming and this is a problem, so one should seek ways of dealing with it?
Yeah. Since we're all different, you know, we have different personalities, we have different coping styles and mechanisms, we have different amount of resource, the social support, so it's going to be different for each of us. But when stress begins to produce symptoms, and the symptoms are going to be biological, it affects your physical body, it's going to affect your emotions, your thinking and behavior.
Right.
So when you're getting symptoms, we need to all, you know this and recognize this within ourselves that we are getting stressed up. Now we'd better do something about it.
Okay, fantastic. I'm going to pause you there because I'm going to come back to the different symptoms that can be caused by stress, but I'm going to bring Faheem into the conversation. You know, we all are stressed at work. You know, we go to work, it's our bread, it's our bread and butter, we have families to look after. You know, being at the level that you are, you went through life quite quickly and you've reached the top very quickly, early on in life. How did you manage those stresses? Because with that route of a specific goal-oriented path, you know, the stresses seem to be more because you know exactly what you want. If it doesn't work out, then you're like, oh gosh, what am I supposed to do now? So how did you cope with it?
Maha, basically, you've touched upon three things in one sentence. Now, I mean, I'm going to have to deconstruct this.
Please do that.
Firstly, when we speak of success and how we deal with life and everything, so there is a total schematic that one needs to follow. You have to have a very clear head. You have to be organized. You have to be extremely focused in your life. In my book, which I have in front of me, it's called CEO at 34. I've basically covered this in a slightly different angle, but the first thing that I always talk about is psychology. Now, I'm from the finance and investments industry, but I'm talking about psychology. I mean, if you cannot understand or appreciate or deconstruct or reconstruct psychology, you can't get anywhere. I'm sure Dr. Aisha would maybe second that.
Because that's very interesting.
Because
really.
you just cannot move in life unless your psychology is clear. Now, it's very simple. If you want to achieve something in life, you have to have a very clear head. You have to have the ability. You have to have the desire. Then you have to have an opportunity.
Right.
But above all, you have to have a will and persistence. Now, what people do, and I'll just try to be short here on this point. If with Allah's grace, if I was able to become CEO at 34, that was like 5 years ago, it wasn't easy. It was a very difficult task, and believe me, I mean, stress is a very small word here.
Right, okay.
You have to deal with things on, most of the times you're dealing with things on a war footing basis. It becomes your second nature.
Okay.
That makes you hard, harsh, as well as very hard-headed.
Okay.
But at the same time, that does not justify one becoming too hard. I don't have a better word, I'm sure. Dr. Aisha can correct me. But stress is something which, before you talk about stress, I think one has to talk about psychology of a situation.
Right.
Have to deconstruct it, have to identify it. Once you have identified it, you have to accept it. This thing is causing me stress.
Right.
Accept it, understand it, then it becomes easier.
Okay.
Then gradually build on it.
Okay, fantastic. Okay, so now I wanted to pick up on the point that Faheem just said, that you have to have a clear head, you have to be focused in a workplace in order to succeed. Now, if you are feeling stressed, you're feeling that anxiety, from a medical point of view, how is one supposed to keep a level head? Because I'm sure, a lot of my viewers are watching out there, and, I've been through that as well, that I know what I want, but, you get so clouded and you get so overwhelmed with life and, like maybe financially or maybe, socially there's some things going on. So how do we learn to cope with it in order to keep that focus so that our work doesn't suffer?
Yeah, definitely when we are stressed up, our productivity is going to be affected. So I think the first and foremost thing is to be able to recognize the signs and symptoms, because we can manage them only once we recognize that we are stressed up.
Okay, so let me interject there. So Faheem said that, it's good to keep focused and clear-headed, and if you're getting stressed, to accept it. So what are the symptoms? How can people recognize it before they get overwhelmed?
Yeah. I think an easy way of to understand it would be to just imagine when one of us is faced with an imminent threat.
Right.
So we have this fight and flight response.
Yes.
There's hormones pouring into the blood, and they accelerate your heart rate. You feel these palpitations, your breathing gets very fast.
Yeah.
There's vasoconstriction, so you feel cold and clammy, your blood pressure rises. So these are the physical symptoms that happen when you're faced with imminent danger.
Right.
And they have had an evolutionary perspective, because if you're faced with danger, you run away and you save your life.
Yeah.
But when stress becomes chronic and you constantly, the body doesn't differentiate between imminent threat and ongoing threat.
Right.
So the same hormones are pouring into your blood.
Okay.
So they are going to cause symptoms, and the symptoms can easily be remembered if we remember a triad of effects. For example, it's going to affect your emotions. The stress is going to produce changes in your thinking and behavior.
Right.
So in emotions, it's like you're going to feel low, you'll feel disappointed, you may become tearful, you may lose motivation, commitment and confidence.
Yeah.
As regards thinking, like you're saying, your thinking appears clouded, you can't focus. Your concentration goes down.
Yeah.
So obviously your productivity then goes down. And as far as behavior is concerned, people will get irritable. They'll take their anger out on the kids when they return home from work, or kick the dog.
So, oh gosh, don't do that, guys. So
you'll get irritable, aggressive. On the other side of the spectrum, you may become withdrawn
Right.
and be in your shell.
Okay.
So it's thinking.
Okay, and can you be
behavior, and
both?
emotions.
Because I think when I get stressed, I'm a bit of both.
You
I
get
become
both,
restricted,
yeah.
but then I'm also being aggressive. It's kind of
Yeah,
crazy.
yeah.
But okay, so just talking about these issues, how do we cope with them? Because this is and please, I want our viewers to write in if I'm wrong, that we just kind of take it in our stride, or we try to take it in our stride, and we don't actually actively do anything productive to deal with these symptoms. We just think, oh, it'll be fine, it'll pass, but they don't pass. So what do we do?
Yeah. Again, repeating what I said, the first thing is to know thyself. Know these symptoms, identify them, and hold yourself and recognize that I'm getting stressed up. I'd better do something about it. You can start with lifestyle changes. They don't sound too big, but little changes can make a whole lot of difference.
Okay.
So exercising, like we were just discussing, is going to release healthy endorphins in your mind and make you feel happier. Making the right food choices, because if your blood sugar level is too low, you're irritable. If you're overeating, you're lethargic. So taking light, frequent, healthy snacks.
Okay.
Getting family and support of your friends is very important.
Okay.
So first of all, it's these lifestyle changes.
Okay, I'm just going to pause you there. I just want to, these lifestyle changes, if one has adopted them, I want to ask Faheem that we're talking about work-related stress. So, for example, if it's a target-oriented job, which you would every week there's a new target, or every month there's a project which has to do certain, it causes more anxiety, it can cause more stress for the person working in that. How would you advise them to cope, or how did you cope when you had stuff like that? Because you had a vision, you had a very clear goal, and you managed to keep the anxiety and stress at bay, or did you actually suffer from that at times?
I think anybody who says that he or she is not suffering from stress is lying.
Okay.
Okay. It's just everybody faces it. Everybody, even the pharaoh of old, faced depression. Okay, let's not get into that. So I mean, everybody goes through it. It's just how you deal with it, how you present yourself, how you carry yourself. Now, as you have used one word, and Dr. Aisha has also used the word clouded. The moment you're clouded, you'd better decloud.
Right.
As soon as you can.
Okay.
Because it's very simple. I just one should ask oneself a question: if I don't fix this, who's going to fix it for me?
Right.
I drown. Just say to yourself, I'm going to drown if I don't fix this. What happens is that initially increases the stress. You're like, oh my God, I'm gone.
Yeah.
But what that does is it sort of bypasses your. She's the expert, so she can.
We're going to get both
This is
opinions,
because,
don't
from
worry.
my perspective, this is what I've experienced in life.
Yeah.
I haven't studied this, but this is what I've experienced. That you have to bypass your existing circuits, your traditional human normal responses. You have to bypass them very quickly.
But that's the thing. This is why we've got this, balance here. That one's an expert, one's a real person going through that and trying to implement these changes in their life, and you manage to do that. But there are people who struggle to do that, Dr. Aisha. So how would you advise them, because some people find it very difficult to find that motivation. Like you said, that if I don't fix it, what's going to happen? For a lot of people, it's like, okay, I'll drown. But they're so demotivated or stressed out, they're like, okay, well, that's better than continuing with this. So how do we deal with that kind of mentality? And people who can't get out of it themselves?
Well, if things are really bad and the stress has turned into if stress continues, it turns into distress at one point. And if distress continues, it turns into depression.
Right.
And depression is a disorder or a disease, and it needs treatment then. So there are different ways. If you're just stressed up, you can deal with coping mechanisms, like Faheem has just said. You need to identify the stressor as well. For example, if at work, what's bothering you? Are you being harassed, or is too much work, or too little pay, or whatever? So looking at the cause of the stress and dealing with that is very important. But if you've gone on to a depressive disorder, then obviously you need a host of biological and psychological treatments.
Okay, fantastic. Faheem, so being employer, what are the types of problems or stresses that you can see in the workplace, which are very common? And do you, are there any ways tools to deal with it that you give to your employees?
Yes. First of all, the list is pretty long, so I'll try to keep it short. Giving it a very unscientific definition is, you see a lot of noise.
Noise, okay.
I call it psychological noise. You see, people have too much on their minds, and when people talk about stress, I just like to sort of myself throw caution to the wind, and I say, is this real stress or is it imagined stress? Because
Right.
you see, we have our own desire. I should do this, I should do that, I should be like this. That's fine. Sometimes we're not putting in enough effort to achieve all that. Maybe things aren't that bad.
Okay.
A. B. When there is real stress, I've noticed that people respond very differently.
Okay.
Some people, they basically, as Dr. Aisha said, I think I totally agree with her, that some people withdraw. I'm speaking from a corporate perspective. They sort of withdraw into their own cubicle.
Okay.
Some people become, they try to hit out and try to break free. That doesn't work. You're doing the wrong thing. It is the job of the senior to understand and to implement a rectification process, which does not start by saying, oh, the font of your letter wasn't right.
Okay.
That's ridiculous. That's what usually comes up. Oh, the paragraphing was not good. No.
Yeah.
You need to stop everything. You need to bring the people in, and you need to firstly take them out of their environment, bring them into a different environment, even if it's not neutral. But you have to start bypassing the circuits.
Okay.
First, for two reasons. One, their existing mind has to cool off, and you have to start building in new concepts. I'll give you a very harsh example. If somebody is not performing well, and you know that person is good, but for reasons A, B, C, you could not investigate what the reasons were, he or she is not performing well.
Yeah.
You bring them in, and you can bring in a very harsh reality. Okay, this might happen. There are consequences for you for not doing this.
Okay.
Now, up till now, I can see the change on your expression.
Yeah.
You're like, oh God, no.
Yeah.
No, but let's be constructive here. Just
Yes.
bear with me. Just one more minute. It is the job of the senior to then bring in the solution as well. Okay,
Yeah.
listen, why are you doing this? Do you want this consequence? And he or she is like, no, obviously not. Then why are you doing it? Like, oh no, I'm really stressed out. I've got this, I've got that. You're like, are you sure you've got that? After 10 minutes of discussion, you find out that the problem is only 40% of what they were saying.
Okay.
Yes, that 40% is real. You have to fix that. And you have to tell people how to help themselves, how to manage themselves. People are quite capable, but I've noticed this thing again and again. People want examples. They want to see examples in front of them.
Okay.
Okay, how do you do it? Well,
Yeah.
just start asking yourself questions. Just say why. Why is this happening?
Okay.
Why can't I do this? Why can't I achieve a target? Of course, if there is a serious problem in an individual, then that is beyond the work-related area. That
Right.
needs professional help.
Yeah.
And
So
that
I
needs
mean,
to be
so
done.
then how do you, like in the workplace, how do you balance that? Because I think for a lot of people there's maybe that fear that if, they find out that there's a lot of stuff going on in my head and there's a lot of stresses outside which is causing me depression or some sort of mood disorder, then I could lose the only one good thing in my life. So how would you, advise people to cope with stuff like that? Because that's a massive stress for a lot of people, isn't it?
Look, basically what we're doing is we have a mind, and we are overloading it with information that is, some of it is real, some of it is unreal. In our present day society, we've got phones, we've got computers, we've got TVs, we've got this, we've got that, and on top of that, we've got these bloated egos that we live with,
Yeah.
and in other people as well. We face it. So we're constantly trying to push each other.
Okay.
Now, for the intelligent person, by intelligent, I do not mean somebody who's come from Harvard or from Oxford. No.
No.
I mean somebody who has the EQ to understand, okay, fine, I see this happening. Do I really need to do this?
Okay.
Do I really need to get into this? I remember once we had a discussion here about phones.
Yeah.
Let's not get into that. Do we need those expensive phones?
Yeah.
Maybe we do. Many of us don't.
Okay. Well, they also say this technology is also another reason for us, our increased anxiety and stress, because, we're constantly looking at the screen. But I want to bring, Dr. Aisha, I want to ask you, what Faheem saying, it's, absolutely fine and it's perfect. And if one can think like that clearly and have that level of objectivity, then we're fine. But when we are stressed or when we are overwhelmed and, going towards that state of depression or distress, we can't think like that. can we? So how does someone in that frame of mind get out of that situation?
I think-
Especially so it doesn't affect their work.
Yeah. Like I said, we start with lifestyle modification.
Yes.
You know, all work and no play is not going to get you anywhere. So, secondly, if you look at your work, I think we need to prioritize and organize our life. So just doing everything because the whole world is, you know, doing Facebook and doing this and texting.
I agree.
You know, that's very taxing for me. I sometimes just block my Facebook for months and I just won't go on that.
Yeah.
So we need to prioritize and see what's important for us, because we're all different individuals, you know, with
Okay.
different personalities and different coping mechanisms.
Right.
So what may be good for you may not be good for me. So I
Okay.
think just going with the wind is not right.
Okay.
So
Yes, so no, please continue. So
Yes.
so what should one do?
So I think like you may eliminate some things from your life or put them down in the list. So prioritizing and then organizing, have a list and try and do things according to that. Also, don't push too much pressure on yourself. For example, like Faheem said, you know, you may be bringing some things with you, bad habits. For example, perfectionism can really get you stressed up if you're wanting to, you know, do the right thing at the right point and the right. So maybe just getting your standards a bit low and accepting your environment and accepting your productivity will help you.
Okay.
And
So I want to talk about this. Like you said, it's a triad of treatment. You know, if someone is getting overwhelmed by work, so you have the professional help, then you have the physical aspect and the life changes. So what's the third aspect that you would say is part of that triad?
yeah, I think making social changes
Okay.
in your life. So look at the social, is the person being supported at home? You know, if especially in women, there's a lot of stress when they go out to work because they have to juggle, you know, the home and the job. So giving social support, connecting with family and friends, and that again comes in your lifestyle modification. So you need to tackle your biology, psychology, and sociology.
Okay. So Faheem, let me ask you. You know, when you see your employees, when you see even in your own journey, did you find that having that balance was very important? But because it's a competitive industry, one can't really have a 50-50 balance. So what do you see? What did you see for yourself? Did that balance help you keep your stress levels down, or more family time was better, less family time was good? What was the situation?
It's a tricky question, but of course it's equally important. Yes, you have to have a balance. But one thing I'll give you an example. What I did once I was working, and it was really, you know, a lot of work was happening. I was stressed out. Okay, so what I did was I opened my drawer, I pulled out a book, and I started reading.
Okay.
So a guy walked into my room, and this is very interesting because I'm speaking from a psychology and from a social standpoint.
Yeah.
The guy walked in and he said something very interesting. He said, "Okay, in such a stressful environment, you're working, you're reading." And I said to him, I mean, I don't know why I said this to him, but I said, "Look, right now my left side of the brain was working. Now suddenly my right side is working, so the left side is taking a break." He didn't like what I said. He just walked out of my room. Okay, so, but I mean, it worked like a charm for me. See, what we're doing is we've got 24 hours. We're doing a lot of things, good or bad, in those 24 hours. So that means you have to multitask.
Right.
What I've noticed is that people are pretty bad at multitasking.
Yeah.
That's one thing which I'm actually pretty good at.
Okay.
That doesn't make me an expert, but one thing I've noticed this is there's an alarming lack of ability to multitask. They have to just do one thing at one time. That's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But one should at least accept it. I can't do 2-3 things at one time.
Okay.
Thinking you can do it and then not being able to do it, that sort of starts to compound.
Right.
And you see, people don't exercise.
Yeah.
Exercise requires discipline. The body needs to burn. The muscles need to burn, literally.
Okay.
So that really makes you feel better afterwards.
Right.
But we just don't do it. I don't understand why. I mean, we as a nation, we just love to eat.
Yeah. It's
but
comforting. It's good. It makes you feel good afterwards.
well, so it is. It's for cattle as well. You know, the cattle does the same thing. So, I mean, notice all the people who have slightly disciplined lives.
Yeah.
I believe Dr. Aisha would also agree with that. If you have a disciplined life, that stress starts to erode.
Okay. But no, okay, so we're making it sound like, you know, yes, we know what we should do. See, that's the thing. I'm sure people that are watching, they're aware that they need to do exercise and they need to have a balanced life. And when you're getting stressed, you should read a book. You should switch off. Distract yourself from the stresses. But we're not that good at that. We're not that good at distracting ourselves.
Sorry, I'm going to cut you here because it's not hurting us.
What's not hurting us?
That pain is not that severe. The pain of feeling that stress is within a certain threshold. Why does it happen that you meet someone after like 10, 15 years and you realize that this guy has changed totally? He's become such a wonderful person because he went through some cataclysm.
Yeah.
So we need to start feeling the pain, and when we're feeling the pain, we should accept it. This is really getting on my nerves now.
Yeah.
I need to get up, I need to go for a walk, I need to have a regular exercise routine, I need to read something, I need to write. I mean, I like writing.
Okay.
I enjoy writing, and people always say to me, how do you write books? I'm like, 15 minutes a day. And they're like, it's about discipline, it's not about what I do.
Okay. Well, let's bring Dr. Aisha into this. How do we say when we have lived a not a disciplined life, we've eaten whatever we've wanted, we slept whenever we want, we get socialized, there isn't that balance. How do we then add, once you're past 25, once you're past 30, how do you implement this discipline? Because it is a training, isn't it? It's about conditioning your mind to be a certain way. How do we start that process? Because that's who we're talking to, like the people who aren't disciplined, the people that are struggling. What is the first step that they should take?
I think again, it's different for different people.
Yes.
For example, I may like sticking to a routine, but you may not. So I think we have to individualize this and see what's right for each person.
Okay.
But one thing that we don't do as a nation is we don't work hard enough, but then we don't relax enough either.
Okay.
So putting in relaxing things for yourself, because if we see we are running around working and thinking myriads of problems in our heads, take the time out to sit back and enjoy something for yourself.
Right.
It may be reading, it may be music, it may be praying, whatever.
Okay.
So taking the time out, because otherwise obviously things keep building up and break you down.
Okay. And Faheem, have you ever seen within your line of work that someone has pushed themselves to such an extreme that they've just gone into a meltdown completely? And have you ever seen someone go through a meltdown and then build themselves back up?
I've seen meltdowns. I haven't seen build-ups or build-ups
Afterwards.
that frequently.
Okay.
Because it's the job of the senior. No, I'm sorry, I'm taking it to the corporate work
No,
area.
that's what we want. We want
It
to
is the job of the
side.
senior, it is the job of the CEO to bring in sanity, justice within. Why do humans react to justice? Even a murderer who is dealt with justly knows, okay, I'm being treated properly. I mean, Dr. Aisha can obviously clarify, stages of, I think it's called pathology, psychopathology or whatever. Even they have an inkling of what's right and what's wrong. It is the job of the boss to maintain order, sanctity, and some kind of sanity.
Okay.
Now, why am I saying this? Because this thing is happening not that regularly.
Okay.
That's why organizations suffer. Forget the junior, forget his or her psychology. That's down the drain. The organization suffers, your profits suffer, everything suffers. I mean, I'm giving a big example. I mean, why do you think these companies, these big companies, I won't take any names that we all talk about, why do you think they've got a very different work environment? You can do what you want, you can sit the way you want, you can dress the way you want, and yes, they're only ruling the earth. You see the effect of psychology.
Yeah.
What they made was good, but how they used it and how they dealt with people, that was amazing.
Okay.
And even that has its limits. So you can well imagine what happens when a boss is not doing this. So if I see a meltdown, that's basically bad for me. Why? Because I should have seen it before it happened. How many times has that happened? You're walking through the office, you look at someone, something's not right. If you don't have that sensitivity or professional understanding to understand that something's not right,
Okay.
you don't deserve to sit there.
Okay, well, building up on this point that you said that, depends on the environment of the business. So, for example, you have high achievers, they're in one environment which is very healthy for them and they're excelling. And then they decide to shift over to another company, and I'm sure you must have seen this in your, in your experience, that the environment is different, so they're not able to excel as much, which causes them more stress. For someone like that, how would you get them to cope with such a situation?
It's very interesting that you said that. I've actually covered this in my book.
Yeah.
I have a term for such people.
Okay.
I call them environmentals.
Okay, environmentals.
Not environmentalists, no, environmentals. Okay, we have to first sort of step back, and I'll just try to be very short about this, but people who are totally exposed or absolutely indexed to the environment are doing themselves harm. What does that mean? When the environment is good, they're rising. When the environment goes down, they plummet. So you have to have a bit of insulation around you. So people have to be told from a boss's perspective, as well as from their own self, that when they talk to themselves, I should be better than this.
Okay.
You see, I mean, how can you help someone who doesn't want help? I was studying hypnosis when I was young.
Yeah.
I don't know hypnosis.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm very fascinated by these things. And the first paragraph was, does this person want to leave smoking? It was about an example, somebody who came to a hypnotist and said, I want to leave smoking.
Yeah.
The first question the hypnotist asked that person is, do you want to leave smoking? And the person is shocked. Of course I want to leave smoking. He's like, I don't think so.
Okay.
So your hypnosis is of no use.
Yeah.
You don't want to do it. So, I mean, when people stress out, I mean, I have a slightly harsher angle to it. What have you done yourself to sort of de-stress and to maximize yourself? When you start hitting that ceiling, okay, I have to go beyond this ceiling. That's when, ideally, in my books at least, I could be wrong, somebody has to come in and help. They need to go and talk to someone. I'm sorry to say, in Pakistan, what we do is we like to be given things to us. And I mean, I see people day in and day out who are they're not even close to their ceiling of self-efficiency, stress management, or work efficiency. And those people you see near the ceiling, ironically, and this is almost 100% certainty, they never complain.
Yeah.
They don't look stressed. I'm being a little harsh here, but this
let's give the harsh reality to everyone, shall we? So
yeah, I mean, we have that example in Urdu. I mean, I can take the horse to the pond to drink, but I can't force the horse to drink.
Yeah.
But as a boss, I just want to conclude on this because I don't want to hog this up. It is the job of a boss to constantly, like a hawk, look at the environment and make sure that negative psychology and negative stress does not come in. Actually, stress can be pretty good.
Okay. Yeah, if it's channeled in the proper sense. Okay, that's
so just putting in a word
Please.
here. I think the concept of emotional quotient is very important here. There was a study in Harvard once in which they found out that getting into a good university is more dependent on IQ, the intelligence quotient. But once you're in, then who goes the farthest is directly proportional to their EQ rather than IQ.
okay.
So having a healthy emotional quotient, which would mean recognizing your own emotions, connecting with your emotions, understanding other people's emotions and making the right responses is important to de-stress and have a good
Absolutely.
output.
Absolutely. I think, and it's really important that we're talking about this today because, I feel like at times that we devalue and undermine our emotional aspect of our lives, and like, oh no, it'll be fine. Get a grip, get over it. It's but recognizing and then doing something productive in order to deal with these stresses, I think, is the healthy
Maha,
way.
I think that's partially correct. Things do sort of resolve in due time, but it is just that certain percentage of things that don't get fixed that one needs to be very careful of, because they tend to become bonfires very quickly.
So exactly, it's like what you said in the beginning. It's about prioritizing and figuring out, recognizing what the stresses are and then dealing with them accordingly. But I want to ask you, being the CEO, being the head, the stress of the team leader and the stress of the senior, it can have a trickle-down effect. So how would, you said about, having a hawkeye on the environment, but how about these team leaders, who maybe aren't as emotionally evolved or, have such a high, EQ? How would you say first of all, how do they deal with it, and how do the people working under them deal with it?
Okay. This is once again a pretty big topic, but I've covered this in my book, by the way.
Yeah. So if anyone wants to read it, everyone read the book for the answers.
Because it's extremely important for a boss. Now, if a CEO cannot understand that his managers are not not handling their people properly, you see, I totally agree with Dr. Aisha that your EQ and IQ are two separate things. Okay. In my book, actually, I've tried to identify this as EQ is dealing with humans, IQ is dealing with inanimate objects or inanimate problems. I mean, it's a very crude definition, but maybe I'm right. What I'm trying to say is, if a CEO or if a boss cannot understand that his sub-teams are dealing with the humans and the inanimate aspects correctly, then it's his fault.
Okay.
Those people are responsible themselves. Okay, they're not supposed to be spoon-fed all these things, but if their boss is doing something right, they have to immediately latch on and see the example. If there is a boss who has a habit of amplifying stress for his juniors, then that person doesn't deserve to be there.
Right,
that person is not part of the team, that person is creating trouble. The Vikings used to laugh all the time.
Okay.
That was part of their culture. Why would they laugh? They knew they were about to die in some crazy raid or whatever. But they had this thing about laughing. They would all laugh. The chief would also laugh. They would all laugh, oh, we're going to die.
Okay.
So that's one way of dealing with stress. But the fact of the matter is he led by example.
Yeah.
This is a very oblique reference that I'm giving, but what's happening right now in our, and I want to be very black and white about this, in our corporate arena, there is an HR epidemic crisis.
Okay.
There is and it's got nothing to do with, okay, you selected the right person. That's a separate mistake. The lack of understanding of psychology and the willful neglect of psychology. I mean, I see it every day. And the funny thing is, where you don't see these things, those houses are more profitable. Those organizations are better.
Okay. Okay, well, moving on from the organization, you know, people who then go from the office and take their work stress home, it has an effect on the people around them.
Definitely, yes.
So how would you, you know, the person who's going through the stress is not coping. So how would you advise people who are the family members, how should they deal with it, and what should they do? Because it can also turn into anger, you know, it can cause a lot of tension. And so what would your professional advice be?
My professional advice would be that it's basically, I mean, you can't forget the person who's going through that. So he's the most important person that needs to be tackled and address the issue. And the other people can help by being supportive, not being critical, and being there for her, you know, or him, whoever, and keep things smooth around him. So it has to be a concerted effort, and looking at all the things, you know, for example, especially in women, because, you know, they are working and they are looking after the home. If they are stressed up, that stress is going to transfer into her children. It reflects onto the children, and so the children are going to perhaps grow up with anxiety or feel stressed up. So you're affecting the next generation. So it is so important to sit and think and support and be there for each other.
Okay. But how would you, but that's the thing, I mean, like realistically, this is the most testing time, isn't it? When one person is being unreasonable, and it's a continuous, you know, it's been going on a prolonged period of time, and that person is refusing to get help. What are the, you know, methods that the people around them can take? Because there's only so much you can be like, support, gee, yes, you're right, it'll be fine. But if that person's anger is growing, their irritability is getting worse, what are the, you know, coping tactics?
I think we need to look at this huge stigma that we have. Like Faheem said, you know, we don't look at psychology, we don't think it's important, and it's stigmatized. Going to a psychologist or a psychiatrist is considered, because they're called paglon ka doctor, you know. So
exactly.
So nobody wants to visit them. But if things are getting bad, I think we need to realize that the brain is an organ like we have the heart and the liver. So we don't feel stigmatized if we have a heart problem, we'll go to a cardiologist, or if we have a liver disease, we'll go to the, the gastroenterologist. So the brain is perhaps one of the most important organs of the body, and there's so many chemicals and things can go wrong. So if things are getting bad, if there are symptoms, we need to get help.
Right, okay.
And the help can be in the form of drugs. We may need to alter the chemicals in the brain, and it can be in the terms of psychological help and sorting out psychological issues.
Okay, fantastic. Okay, and we've actually run out of time now, so I would like to just get some final words from Faheem. If you could just, anything you'd like to give to all the, any words of advice you'd like to give to all those stressed out individuals there. Anything?
Well, firstly, deconstruct, understand what it is, stop blaming others, blame yourself for a minute, and all of a sudden you'll realize your problems have gone down the drain, and just start making, as Dr. Saab said, start making changes. Start with your life.
Fantastic. And Dr. Aisha, anything you'd like to share?
I think my final message might be for women, because I feel passionate for women and children. So women generally tend to internalize in our society, so they'll keep the distress in, they won't talk about their problems, they won't challenge if something's going wrong around them. So I would advise them to get a voice for themselves and break this conspiracy of silence and get your rights.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for joining us
Pleasure.
and being here today. I hope you guys enjoyed that. I definitely feel a lot better, and there is nothing wrong with expressing yourself and saying that there's something wrong. You have your family, you have your friends, and there will be someone out there who is willing to help. And we need to lose the stigma attached to going to a psychiatrist or psychologist. There's nothing better than going to someone for an hour and just talking about yourself and your life and getting some advice and how to deal with it. So with that, have a wonderful day, and we will see you for another episode bright and early tomorrow morning. See you. Bye-bye.